She had always dreamed of studying at the university her father once spoke about with pride. When the time came to pay her tuition, she trusted her stepmother with the money her father had left behind for her education. But the day she walked into the office, the truth hit her like a storm. The money was gone. Her stepmother, with a cruel smile, leaned close and whispered, "You're finally broke. No one will want a girl with nothing." The words pierced her heart, leaving her trembling with shame and fear. She thought her dreams were gone forever, and for a moment, she almost believed her stepmother's lies. But fate had other plans. Days later, a letter arrived from her father's lawyer. With shaking hands, she opened it, not knowing that her whole life was about to change. Her father had not only left her a full scholarship to the university of her choice, but also company shares that made her wealthier than her stepmother could ever imagine. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she read each word, her father's love shining through the lines he had written long ago. She wasn't broke. She wasn't abandoned. She was the true heir of her father's dreams and sacrifices. When she walked back onto campus, her head was held high. The same stepmother who mocked her was left speechless, watching the girl she tried to ruin rise higher than ever. It was not just victory, it was justice. The engagement hall was filled with music, flowers, and smiling faces. She stood in her beautiful dress, her heart beating fast, ready to begin a new chapter of her life with the man she loved. Everyone came to celebrate their love, but her stepmother had other plans. As she leaned close to adjust the veil, her stepmother's cold whisper cut through the joy like a knife. "You are broke now. Let's see if he still wants you when he finds out." The cruel words made her freeze. Her stepmother smirked, hoping the fiancé would walk away and leave her humiliated in front of everyone. Her heart sank as doubt filled her. Would he stay? Would he believe the lie? The guests laughed and clapped around her, but she felt as if the ground was falling away. The stepmother's whisper was loud in her ears, poisoning the moment meant to be the happiest of her life. She held back tears, her fingers trembling, afraid her entire future was about to shatter. Then, as if destiny had been waiting for this very day, the lawyer entered with a sealed envelope. He announced it was a letter from her late father, meant to be opened only on her engagement day. The room grew silent. She opened the letter with shaking hands, her eyes scanning the words that changed everything. Her father had left her not just wealth, but the entire inheritance of a gold mining empire. She was not broke. She was the sole heir, the true owner of a fortune beyond imagination. Gasps filled the hall. Guests stared in awe, whispering to each other about the sudden revelation. The stepmother's face turned pale, her plan destroyed in an instant. Her fiancé looked at her with tears in his eyes, not because of the money, but because he saw her strength, her grace, and the love that never wavered even when she thought she had lost everything. He held her hand tighter, proving that he wasn't with her for riches but for her heart. The hall erupted in cheers, louder than before, this time filled with admiration and respect. She smiled through her tears, feeling her father's presence blessing her from above. She had been tested, betrayed, and mocked, but now she stood tall, shining brighter than ever. The engagement was no longer just about a union of love. It was about justice, destiny, and a daughter's victory over cruelty. As the music played again and the celebration continued, her stepmother slipped into the shadows, defeated by the very truth she had tried to hide. The bride-to-be, once whispered to be broke, was now celebrated as the golden heiress of her father's empire. And with her fiancé beside her, she stepped into her future with courage, love, and the sweet taste of triumph. The night was cold when her stepmother finally showed her true colors. With bags packed and tears in her eyes, she stood at the door of the house she had grown up in, the house that held every memory of her late father. Her stepmother's voice was sharp, cruel, and mocking. "Get out. This is my house now. You are broke, and you have nothing left. Go beg somewhere else." The laughter that followed cut deeper than a knife. She felt her heart break, not because of the house, but because of the cruelty from someone who should have been family. She walked into the street, carrying only a small suitcase, feeling abandoned and betrayed. Neighbors whispered, some pitying her, others avoiding her eyes. She wanted to scream, to cry, but she held her head up even as her stepmother shut the door in her face. It seemed like the end, alone, homeless, and mocked as if she were worthless. The stepmother celebrated inside, certain that she had won. But fate was not finished with her story. Just a few days later, a lawyer came looking for her. He handed her an envelope with her name written in her father's handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it, her heart pounding. It was her father's last letter, and inside was the truth that turned her world around. The villa, the same house she had been thrown out of, had been legally left to her by her father. Her stepmother had no rights, no claim, and no power. Every brick, every wall, every corner of that house belonged only to her. Tears of relief and joy filled her eyes. She wasn't broke, she wasn't unwanted, she was the rightful owner. The lawyer accompanied her back to the house, documents in hand. The stepmother's smile vanished when the papers were shown. Her face went pale, her arrogance shattered. In front of the neighbors who had watched her throw the girl out, the truth was revealed. The villa belonged not to the cruel woman who mocked, but to the young woman she had tried to ruin. The moment was unforgettable. The same neighbors who pitied her now clapped and congratulated her, cheering her strength and her father's justice. She walked back into her home with pride, every step heavy with victory. The rooms no longer felt empty. They were filled with her father's love and his promise that she would never be left with nothing. Her stepmother, humiliated and powerless, packed her own bags this time. The young woman watched silently, not with hatred, but with a quiet strength that showed she had risen above cruelty. She had been thrown out with mockery, but she returned as the true owner. That night, she stood by the window of her father's villa, looking at the stars. With tears in her eyes and a smile on her lips, she whispered, "Thank you, Father." She was no longer the girl who was mocked as broke. She was the rightful heiress, the one who won. She thought her life was finally calming down after her father's death, but her stepmother was not finished with her cruelty. One morning, debt collectors arrived at the door with papers full of her name. They claimed she owed a large sum of money, loans she had never taken. Shocked and scared, she tried to explain it was a mistake, but the documents looked real. Her stepmother stood behind them with a fake look of pity, then leaned close and whispered, "You're broke now. Nobody trusts a girl in debt." Her cruel smile said it all. This was her plan from the beginning. The girl felt her world crumbling. She walked the streets with her head down, hearing people gossip that she had borrowed money she couldn't pay back. Friends started to avoid her, neighbors shook their heads, and she felt the weight of shame pressing down on her shoulder. She wanted to scream that she was innocent, but the lies were louder than her voice. Her stepmother celebrated quietly, believing she had trapped her forever under the weight of fake debts. But life has its own way of protecting the innocent. Days later, she was called to the lawyer's office, where he handed her an envelope sealed with her father's handwriting. She opened it with trembling fingers, and as she read, her tears flowed freely. Her father had foreseen the possibility of betrayal. In the letter, he explained that he had secured a large amount of bank savings in her name, untouchable by anyone else. Not only that, but he had also left her several plots of valuable land, legally registered as hers alone. The debts her stepmother planted were nothing compared to the wealth and security her father had given her. She wasn't broke. She wasn't ruined. She was stronger and richer than her enemies could imagine. Holding the letter, she felt her father's love wrap around her like a shield, reminding her that she was never truly alone. With the lawyer's help, the truth was revealed. The debt collectors discovered the loans were fake, the documents forged. The stepmother's wicked scheme unraveled in front of everyone. Neighbors who once doubted her now looked at her with respect and admiration, ashamed they had believed the lies. Her stepmother, exposed and humiliated, tried to defend herself but failed. She had no power anymore. The young woman walked home that evening with her head high. This time, she was not the victim but the victor. She had land, savings, and above all, the strength of her father's trust in her. As she stood under the open sky, she whispered with tears of gratitude, "Thank you, Father. You protected me even now." The stepmother who once whispered she was broke now had to watch her shine brighter than ever, rising above lies and betrayal. The girl who was mocked as poor was revealed as the true heiress, blessed with security, love, and victory. Her wedding day was getting closer, and she often opened the small box of jewelry her late mother had left behind for her dowry. Each piece was filled with memories, sparkling with her mother's love and blessings. But one morning, when she went to check the box, her heart stopped. It was empty. Every necklace, every bangle, every earring was gone. She rushed to her stepmother in panic, but instead of comfort, she was met with cruel laughter. The stepmother leaned in and whispered coldly, "You are broke now. No dowry, no respect. Who will marry a girl with nothing?" Her chest tightened with pain. The thought of facing her fiancé's family with empty hands crushed her spirit. People in her community already began whispering, mocking her for losing her dowry, treating her as if she had lost her value. She sat alone at night, tears running down her cheeks, asking herself why life was so cruel, why her mother's gift had been taken from her. The stepmother smirked every time she saw her brokenness, certain that she had destroyed her completely. But destiny carries secrets even cruelty cannot erase. Days later, a lawyer arrived with an envelope sealed long ago. Inside was a letter from her late mother, written with tender love. Her hands shook as she read the words. Her mother had created a secret trust fund for her, far greater than the jewelry. The trust contained money, investments, and wealth secured only in her daughter's name, meant to support her future no matter what. The jewelry was precious, but the trust was priceless. Tears of joy mixed with sorrow streamed down her face. She whispered softly, "Mother, you still protect me." The burden that had crushed her heart suddenly lifted. She realized she wasn't broke, and she wasn't powerless. She was the true heiress of her mother's legacy. The jewelry her stepmother stole was nothing compared to the love and foresight her mother had left behind. When the truth was revealed, her fiancé's family looked at her with admiration, not judgment. They respected her not for the trust or money, but for her grace in carrying herself with dignity, even when mocked and betrayed. The stepmother, once so proud of her cruel trick, now stood pale and speechless as the documents were read aloud. The crowd that once whispered against the girl now clapped and congratulated her, praising her strength and destiny. She walked forward that day not as a broken bride, but as a woman blessed by her parents' love. Her stepmother had tried to strip her of pride, but instead, she rose higher than ever. With her mother's secret trust, her future was secure, and her heart was stronger. She looked up at the sky that night, stars shining above, and whispered, "Thank you, Mother." The girl who was mocked as broke was now celebrated as the true daughter of grace, wealth, and love. The wedding hall was glowing with lights, music, and the fragrance of flowers. Guests filled the room, smiling and celebrating her big day. She walked and dressed like a princess, her heart racing with joy and nervousness. But among the laughter and blessings, her stepmother leaned close, her voice sharp and poisonous. Loud enough for others to hear, she whispered, "You are broke. Everyone will soon know the truth. No one respects a poor bride." The cruel words made her freeze. Guests glanced at her with doubt, whispers spread like fire, and her heart sank. Was her special day about to turn into shame? The stepmother smirked, enjoying the tension. She wanted the guests and even the groom's family to believe the bride had nothing. No money, no property, no future. The bride's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, she feared her dream wedding would collapse before her eyes. She felt her father's absence more than ever and wished he were there to protect her. Then, as if destiny itself had chosen this moment, the lawyer entered the hall carrying a sealed envelope. He said it was her late father's final letter, meant to be read on her wedding day. The entire room grew silent. With trembling hands, she gave permission, and the lawyer began to read aloud. The words filled the hall with power and truth. Her father had left her not just blessings, but the full inheritance of his wealth. She was the rightful heiress to his businesses, properties, and fortune. She was not broke. She was the true owner of everything her father had built. Gasps spread across the crowd, and whispers turned into claps of amazement. The stepmother's smile vanished, her face pale as her lies crumbled in front of everyone. She lay on the hospital bed, weak and in pain, the machines beeping softly around her. The doctors had explained she needed urgent surgery, but without payment, they could not proceed. Her stepmother stood by the bed, arms crossed, pretending to sigh with concern. Then she leaned down, close to her ear, and whispered with a cruel smile, "You are broke. No money, no help. Maybe this is the end for you." The words pierced her like another wound, colder than the sickness inside her body. Tears slid down her cheeks. She was terrified, not just of her illness, but of being left to die alone, abandoned. Nurses tried to comfort her, but her stepmother's mocking laugh rang louder in her. She felt her heart breaking, wondering if her life would end with nothing. No chance, no hope, no justice. The stepmother walked away proudly, thinking she had finally won. But destiny never forgets the innocent. Just as she thought all was lost, a lawyer arrived at the hospital carrying a sealed envelope with her name on it. The doctor placed it in her weak hands, and with trembling fingers she opened it. Inside was a letter from her late father, written with love and care. Her eyes widened as she read his words. He had set up a full medical trust for her, ensuring that no matter what happened, her health would always be protected. Along with the trust, he had left property in her name, enough to give her security for a lifetime. She pressed the letter to her chest, sobbing with relief. Her father's love had reached across time to protect her once more. The doctors, now reassured, moved quickly to begin her treatment, and the surgery was scheduled immediately. She wasn't broke. She wasn't helpless. She was safe, shielded by the foresight of the man who had loved her most. When the stepmother returned, expecting to see her broken and weak, she was stunned. The lawyer stood beside the bed, explaining the truth loudly so everyone could hear. The trust and properties belonged solely to the young woman. The stepmother's face turned pale, her lies shattered in front of the doctors, nurses, and relatives. She had no power, no control, only shame. The girl, once trembling with fear, now lay with a peaceful smile. The operation went well, and she woke stronger than ever. Friends and neighbors who had doubted her came to visit, congratulating her for her courage and blessed fortune. The stepmother could only lower her head, defeated by the truth she could never destroy. That night, as she looked out the hospital window, she whispered, "Thank you, Father. You saved me again." Her heart was no longer heavy with fear. She had not only survived, but she had triumphed over cruelty. She was no longer the girl whispered about as broke. She was the true heiress of her father's love and protection, living proof that kindness and justice always win in the end. The groom looked at her, not with doubt, but with pride and love. He held her hand tighter, showing the world that he stood with her not for money, but for the strength and beauty of her heart. The guests, once uncertain, now rose in applause, cheering and blessing her. What was meant to be her humiliation had transformed into her greatest victory. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy. She felt her father's love surrounding her, protecting her even from beyond the grave. The hall echoed with congratulations, not just for the wedding, but for the truth that she was the rightful heiress. The stepmother slipped into the shadows, powerless and defeated. The bride smiled through her tears, standing tall and radiant. She was not the poor girl her stepmother tried to portray. She was her father's daughter, blessed with his love, his legacy, and a future brighter than ever. As she exchanged vows, she whispered in her heart, "Thank you, Father." Her wedding day became more than a union of love. It became the day justice was revealed, lies were destroyed, and a daughter's true worth shone before the world. The sun was setting when she heard the shocking news. Her stepmother had sold the farmland that once belonged to her father. That land wasn't just soil. It was her childhood playground, her father's pride, and the place where every memory of him lived. She rushed to confront her stepmother, but instead of remorse, she was met with mocking laughter. The stepmother sneered and said, "It was mine to sell. You are broke now. You have nothing left." The words stung like fire, and the neighbors who overheard shook their heads, pitying her. Her heart sank as she watched strangers walk across the land, inspecting it as their new property. She wanted to scream, to cry, to fight, but her stepmother's cruel confidence made her feel powerless. For a moment, she truly believed she had lost everything her father worked for. The stepmother celebrated, proud of her supposed victory, certain the girl would never rise again. But destiny carries its own secrets. Days later, a lawyer arrived with a thick envelope sealed with her father's handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened it and found the inheritance letter her father had left behind. Her eyes widened as she read the words that changed everything. The farmland had never belonged to her stepmother at all. Her father had legally transferred it to her name before he passed. Not only that, the documents revealed that beneath the farmland were oil reserves, making her the true owner of wealth beyond imagination. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not because of the riches, but because she felt her father's love and protection even after his death. She realized she wasn't broke. She wasn't powerless. She was the rightful heir to her father's legacy, blessed with both land and fortune. With the lawyer's help, the false sale was canceled, and the farmland was restored to her name. The so-called buyers turned against her stepmother, furious at her deception. Neighbors who had pitied her now clapped and congratulated her, admiring the strength she showed through her pain. The stepmother stood frozen, her face pale as the truth spread. She had mocked the girl, but now the whole village knew who the true owner was. The young woman walked onto the farmland once more, her feet pressing against the soil her father had loved. She looked at the fields, the trees, and the land that now fully belonged to her. In her heart, she whispered, "Thank you, Father. You kept your promise." She felt his presence around her, stronger than ever. Her stepmother, who once boasted about selling her land, was now left empty-handed and disgraced. The girl who was called broke became the heiress of both farmland and hidden treasures beneath it. She stood tall, smiling through tears, no longer the victim of lies. She was the true daughter of her father's dreams, the rightful owner of the land, and the proof that justice always finds its way. She sat at the edge of her bed, her school uniform neatly folded beside her. Tomorrow was supposed to be the first day of her new term, but her stepmother had just crushed her hopes. With fake tears and a bitter smile, the woman had said, "I can't afford your school fees. You are broke, and maybe it's better you stop dreaming so high." Later that night, she whispered more cruelly, "You will never finish school. No future waits for a poor girl like you." The words stabbed her heart, filling her with shame and fear. She loved studying. Her father always told her education was the key to building her future, and she worked hard to make him proud. Now, with her fees unpaid, she imagined being laughed at by her classmates and teachers. She felt her dreams crumbling before they could even begin. The stepmother, seeing her broken spirit, smiled with satisfaction. Neighbors began to gossip, shaking their heads, pitying her as the girl who couldn't even afford to study. But destiny had something powerful waiting. Just a few days later, a lawyer arrived at her small room with an envelope sealed carefully. It carried her father's handwriting, and she clutched it to her chest before daring to open it. Her eyes widened with shock and tears as she read the letter inside. Her father had left her not just enough for school, but far more. She owned the controlling shares of a growing technology company, secured entirely in her name. Her father had believed in her so much that he tied her future to innovation and success. She was not broke. She was the majority owner of a company with a future brighter than anyone could imagine. Her stepmother's lies shattered instantly in her heart, replaced by her father's unshakable love and foresight. With the lawyer's help, the truth quickly spread. The school welcomed her back with honor, and teachers congratulated her. Classmates who once doubted her looked at her with admiration. The news spread around town. She wasn't the poor girl mocked for unpaid fees, but the heiress of a tech empire. The stepmother's face turned pale when she heard, her whispers of broke, drowned out by the voices of people clapping for the girl's strength and destiny. On her first day back, she walked into the classroom with her head held high, not with pride in money, but with pride in her father's faith in her. She sat at her desk, smiling, feeling a sense of justice and victory. Her stepmother, powerless now, could only watch as the girl she tried to destroy rose even higher. That evening, she opened the letter again, reading her father's words slowly, whispering, "Thank you, Father. You gave me wings to fly." She was no longer the girl mocked as too poor for school. She was the true heiress of knowledge, innovation, and her father's love. Her future was not just saved, it was unstoppable. The church bells rang slowly, and the air was heavy with sorrow. She stood beside her father's coffin, her eyes red from crying, her heart shattered. While guests offered condolences, her stepmother leaned close, her lips curling into a cruel smile. In a low whisper, she said, "You are broke now. With him gone, you have nothing." The words struck harder than the grief itself. She bit her lip, holding back tears, feeling abandoned not only by fate, but also mocked in her darkest hour. As the burial ceremony began, the lawyer stepped forward, holding an envelope sealed by her father's hand. The crowd fell silent. With a trembling voice, he read aloud the inheritance letter. Every word carried her father's love and foresight. He had not left her broken. He had left her everything. From properties to savings, from shares to security, she was the true heir of his legacy. Gasps filled the air. Neighbors and relatives looked at her with wide eyes, shocked by the sudden revelation. Some clapped in joy, whispering congratulations through their tears. The stepmother's face turned pale, her arrogance crumbling as everyone realized the truth. The young woman stood taller, her grief mixing with pride. She pressed the letter to her chest, whispering softly, "Thank you, Father." At that moment, she knew she wasn't alone. Her father had made sure his love would protect her even after death. The funeral ended not with shame, but with justice. She walked away no longer the girl whispered about as broke, but the true heiress, carrying her father's name, love, and blessings into the future.